The first time I heard the insinuation, I laughed it off as the kind of careless cruelty sisters trade in the supermarket aisle. "You could do better," Claire's sister, Hannah, had said with a sing-song smile, reaching for the same bottle of olive oil. Claire snorted and waved her off, but the phrase lodged under my skin like a splinter. It was casual, like a seed dropped into already thin soil, and over the months that followed it grew into something neither of them bothered to hide. At first it was small things, extra texts Claire left open on the kitchen table, a lipstick stain on a glass she blamed on a friend, invitations to coffee that somehow turned into late work calls. Then Hannah began showing up with more frequency, unannounced visits that lasted late into the evening, road trips that just happened at the last minute, and a laugh they shared that had the private cadence of conspiracy. The two of them were joined at the hip in ways that looked innocent on the surface but felt like knives under my ribs. I confronted Claire twice, both times with trembling restraint. The first time she cried and swore it was nothing, a momentary lapse, a flirtation that meant nothing. The second time she accused me of being controlling, of not understanding the nuance of closeness between sisters. I wanted to believe her. I wanted to unsee the way her eyes softened when Hannah entered the room, the secretive texts Claire deleted so fast my fingers could not move. But evidence has a brightness to it that excuses cannot dull. Then came the evening that made denial impossible. I was home early, supposedly tied up with a client who'd cancelled. I heard the car before I heard their voices, tires crunching on the gravel, the cheer of two women who thought the house belonged to them as much as it did to me. Claire called up the stairs that Hannah should come in for wine. I stayed silent. I sat on the stairs and listened to the cadence of their conversation, the jokes, the long pauses, the low murmur of two people carving out a private place in a public life. They kissed in the backyard, under the yellow halo of a gardening lamp, careless and sure. Not a furtive brush, not a guilty whisper, a full, slow kiss that erased any pretense. I stood there, invisible and deliberate, watching the woman I loved fold herself around another. The betrayal was not just the act, it was the way they had made a theater and forgotten the audience. I could have screamed, thrown things, called the police. Instead I took out my phone and recorded. I took pictures, logged dates, saved messages that arrived in the moments my back was turned. I left them their night and went to my office to build a different kind of weapon, a file. I am not a vengeful man by instinct, I am careful. Revenge, I decided, had to be something that could not be twisted into melodrama. It had to be precise, legal, and final. The first step was to separate their worlds. Hannah lived with her boyfriend, a man who had been kind to me at family dinners, who trusted Claire and thought our marriage strong. He did not deserve deceit. I printed the messages and photos and slid them anonymously through his mailbox with a handwritten note, "You deserve the truth." The impact was immediate and brutal. The boyfriend confronted Hannah with evidence she could not deny, he moved out within a week. The cracks in her tiny fortress widened. Next I turned to finances. Claire and I shared accounts and mortgage responsibilities. Hannah had been allowed to use our guest suite whenever she wanted, to pick up groceries on our tab, to claim favors that costs nothing until they cost everything. I moved quickly, transferring joint accounts into names that excluded her, formalizing loans she had not repaid, and closing credit lines she had thought of as informal allowances. When she logged into her online statements and saw transactions flagged and accounts closed, panic replaced the composure she'd worn so well in photos. It was not vindictive, it was protection, practical and clinical. But it was not only Hannah who needed a reckoning. Claire's career had been built on reputation in a small industry where gossip is the one currency that travels faster than money. I packaged the materials, screenshots, timestamps, record of the backyard encounter, and a careful chronology showing a pattern of deceit, and took them, anonymously, to a trusted HR consultant who had once done work with Claire's company. I didn't want to humiliate, I wanted consequence. The consultant, recognizing the severity and clarity of the evidence, advised that a discreet review would likely lead to an outcome Claire wouldn't like: internal inquiry, reassignment, reputational damage. When the inquiry started, Claire pleaded surprise and spoke of being targeted by a jealous spouse. Her performance reviews, once glowing, now bore notations about poor judgment and conflicts of interest. Clients who had trusted her began to shift accounts. A promotion that had been all but hers evaporated as quietly as a promise broken. Hannah lost friends fast, her ex's family refused to be near her. The sisterly alliance they'd relied upon for cover dissolved under the floodlight of practical consequences. Friends and family divided like a brittle crust. Some offered me sympathy, others accused me of cruelty, of engineering public shaming where private therapy might have sufficed. I listened to the voices on both sides and understood there was truth in each. But there was also a deeper truth. When the people closest to you conspire to take from you, whether it's dignity, fidelity, or financial security, you have to act in a manner that protects what remains. Claire begged for forgiveness in the months that followed. She called with tears in her voice and apologies slick as oil. "It was Hannah," she said once, mouth raw with confession. "She said I could do better. She said I deserved more." I remembered the olive oil at the grocery store, the casual way poisonous ideas can be offered and accepted. I told her what I felt then, that love is not currency you spend on whims and lay at strangers' feet. Hannah moved away. Her boyfriend refused to speak to her. Claire lost the promotion and, more painfully, the trust of colleagues who had been her allies. I kept the house but learned to lock the guest room. I rebuilt boundaries where they had been broken, not with grand gestures but with quiet rituals, separate accounts, different passwords, friends reintroduced slowly and carefully. The cost was high on all sides, and I do not pretend I was untouched by the collateral damage. I had loved two women who chose to harm me, that left scars that do not heal neatly. There was, in the end, a strange clarity to the ruin. When people strip away pretenses and expose the architecture of their desires, you are left with facts, not feelings. The sister who said do better thought she was offering advice. The sister who listened thought she was seeking freedom. Both were wrong about what they were asking. I had sought only fidelity and honesty, and when those were traded for self-interest, I answered with the only language that could be understood in a world of contracts and consequences. Revenge, in the way I carried it out, was not showy. It was paperwork, quiet conversations, and practical cuts. It was a remaking of boundaries that protected my life from further erosion.